What was the most forbidden sex you've had? Story 1. When I was 19, I attended the funeral of my great-aunt. My mom very awkwardly asked me to speak at the funeral, which was both surprising and unsurprising. Surprising because I had a minimal relationship with my great-aunt, and unsurprising because I have a reputation for good toasts and public speaking, so I hastily compiled a few stories, anecdotes, and nice words and rehearsed as much as I could. I was only given 2 days advance notice, far less than I would have preferred, so I'm doing my best to prepare, and the day arrives. It quickly becomes clear that I'm not offering remarks. I'm delivering the lone eulogy. I would later find out that her son fell too broken-hearted to speak, and no one else in the family. Her nieces and nephews, her daughter-in-law, her brother, my grandfather was willing to step up. It was a very small perfunctory ceremony in a funeral home, maybe about 24 people. The funeral director begins the remarks, gives the vital stats, and introduces me, buoyed by a shot from the flask asked my older brother to bring. I took the stage and set about memorializing the great-aunt who dotted on us when we were young. Kids, but who I never got to know as a person. I'm stretching filling time with an ad-lib worry about how excited she was at her son's recent wedding when I saw the girl. She was about 5'5" tall, shortish dark brown hair cut into bob, framing her face and wearing a tasteful navy blue dress that looked more like what a young professional wears to the office than funeral attire, but it had a small key hill cut out with a peak of her chest. My eyes landed on her just as she dabbed a tear with handkerchief. Our eyes met, and she gave me a weak smile, which emboldened me as I continued to speak. I felt my voice grow a little bolder, and I finished the eulogy to considerable tears and a smattering of applause after the ceremony. Many people came up to me to thank me for the eulogy, including the girl in the blue dress. She introduces herself as Brandy, gave me a deep hug, and kissed me on the cheek. She told me my Aunt Sarah had been her piano instructor, and they had lost touch, but she still thought of my great-aunt. Whenever she played, the funeral was a little unusual, as we were going to have the reception first and then the graveside ceremony afterward. So we go to this hall for a luncheon, and I sat at the table with my cousins. Brandy walks in and makes a beeline for a table. She asks if it's okay if she sits with us, as it's the dedicated young person's table and no one has a problem. So she sits at the table throughout the dinner. She's laughing at my jokes and stories, but I don't notice anything else. After a while, I get up to go to the restroom, and as I'm leaving, she waves to me from the end of the hall. I walk over and she indicates a large coat closet or room and asks if I wouldn't mind helping her with something. I agree, and she opens the door and pushes me into the closet, shutting the door behind me. "I want you to kiss me." She says I give her a weird look because I'm 19 and gawky and awkward, and this seems far-fetched, so she says, "I know that's forward and it's a lot, but I feel like when you were speaking, I saw your heart and it was beautiful, and I want to kiss you and feel your heart." I'm sorry, that's so weird. I'm going to leave now and regret this. Maybe my whole life. I quickly assure her that it was not weird, even though it was, and I thank her for what she said. She steps forward and wraps my arms around her back and we kiss. It's a little awkward but still nice. And we share a few more kisses, each smoother and less clumsy than the last. As we get used to each other, we should probably get back, she says after an awkward pause. But thank you, I needed to feel something, and then she trailed off. We go back to the table at separate times and pick up where we left off. Conversationally, she's still laughing hard at all my jokes, and her glances are getting more daring and suggestive. I'm trying to muster up the courage to make sure I get her number, or Facebook or whatever. Which, in retrospect, is sad. The luncheon goes on for another hour and things begin to wrap up. And that in the front of the venue, smoking a cigarette when she comes up to me again. "Hi," she says brightly. "Listen, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having a lot of feelings and it's never like this. But listen," and she kind of paused, "would you want to hook up with me?" She blushes deep red and looks like she's ready to run away, partly because they want to savor the embarrassment, but mostly because I wanted to. I said, "Sure, yeah." I couldn't figure out a way to downplay my enthusiasm, okay? She says, "Well then, I'm already checked out of my hotel. Can we go to your place?" Shame-regretting insecurity watched over me as I had to quickly explain. I was staying with my mom. She had driven me and there was no way I could arrange a one-night stand at her home that started at a funeral. Her face sunk. She grew red again and she said, "Forget it, I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. I just need to go home, luckily." At that point, my parents came out, and I had an excuse to wave goodbye and get out of the situation, holding my suit jacket, just so I could walk off my... After a time, we were at the graveside. My brother's dad and uncles acted as pallbearers. I was surprised to see Brandy at the gravesite, But there she was. I tried to ignore her and she was trying to ignore me. I was almost immediately distracted, however, as my grandfather had put everyone into frenzy. The large frame portrait of my aunt that had sat in the cascade had gone missing. We ragged our brains and tried to remember whose cars had ended up in playing a hunch. I saw that the hearse we brought Aunt Sarah in was now parked back at the entrance building, where all the mausoleums were. I headed up there and peeked through the windows, and sure enough at the front of the bay I saw the wide frame. One of the pallbearers must have tucked it in there after the casket. I went around to the back, opened the hatch and climbed in, just as I reached the frame and I was ready to crawl back out. I felt a body slide next to me. "Brandy, this is perfect," she exclaimed with a crazed look in her eyes which scared and excited me. "Quick, let's do this," she said. If she definitely closed the curtains and shut the hatch behind us, this felt like it came straight out of a novel. And so did the cliffhanger, dang it, story 2. I was in the back seat of my car at a wedding with my wife at the time. We were going at it when the after-party let out, and everyone there walked past their car, which happened to be the one parked closest to the door. The windows were completely fogged up. We had to lie there for about 20 minutes before opening the car door so I could pull up my pants and tuck in my shirt. My sister knew something was up the next day. I asked about the fogged-up windows, but it was fun, one of the truly risque episodes with that wife. We're gonna need an update for this one. Story 3 played with a girl and then got ahead at 9:30 a.m., waiting for a Taco Bell to open when it was negative 15 degrees outside. We weren't dating, we were barely friends. We were doing a project together all weekend and needed food. We had 20 minutes to wait. She lifted her skirt and said she had an idea of how to pass the time, but never flirted or had any prior intention of fooling around. Never happened again. And we never spoke of it. We then grazed on 30 of Taco Bell over 10 hours while forwarding constantly and finishing our project. Story 4 did my girlfriend in the kitchen counter while her grandma was just behind the door 2 rooms away. Grandma came out, did the whole waistband pulling, and sat down around the kitchen table. The grandma was eating and telling me about how her friend's stepson's brother's girlfriend's father won God knows what award when my girlfriend pulled my hand down there, if flinched and pulled away. But after a stealthy sloshing in my ear, I had to get a slice of that pie, my hands went to work on her while Grandma was sitting directly in front of us. We're a Muslim. Story 5. Me and my ex were walking down to the docks of boats in a stale park in Long Island. We were both in high school, so young and frisky, so we hopped into random stranger's boat and started fooling around. Ended up with her on top, while I was sitting in the captain's chair, and if I could go back and not do it, I wouldn't. Bad move in our part. The next was during the end of June, like 2009. I was 20 and my girlfriend was 18. It was really hot, and I just got done with work, so I went and picked her up to go to the beach. The way I started kind of playing with her a bit, and within 2 minutes she was giving me a hand as I desperately looked for a place to park, so we could do the deed. After like 40 seconds I went, "Screw it, here we go," a double fan street, and pulled over. I had a RAV4, so we put the back seats down and it got on top and started going to town, left the windows down halfway since it was so nice out. After like 5 to 10 minutes, we started hearing voices getting louder and getting very close to us. Look up and around, and there were about 10 parents standing in a group just milling about. I instantly ducked down and go, "Don't move." So many parents, we both just freeze, literally mobilized like a T-Rex was searching for us. Their vision is based stone movement. Turned out we decided to post up and do it right, at a bus stop dropping off the elementary school kids. After a long day of school, thankfully the bus came about 2 minutes later, so we didn't have to wait long, waited another 2 minutes, probably finished up and got dressed, and left quickly. These guys just kept going and going, even after all those interruptions. Now that's dedication. Story 6. I went to a party while in college, and it was about 3 a.m. So everyone was going to bed. My friend who invited me was going to sleep in the master bed with his best friend, who was a girl. He told me I could sleep on the floor in the room and give me a pillow and blanket. He went to go clean up from the party, and she and I were just in the room. She told me that I didn't have to sleep on the floor because the bed could fit all 3 of us. So I drunkenly go up and climbed into the bed. If she lay next to me, my friend came back and got in the bed next to her. At this point, she was now in between us. About 10 minutes go by, and I'm just about to fall asleep when I feel a hand lay on my chest. Next thing I know, the hand is down there and fiddling around. I quickly came to realize that it was her, and immediately didn't know what to do. Considering my friend was also in bed, this went on for another 5 minutes with me, debating in my head if I should get up and leave or stay. Next thing I know, she grabs my hand and sticks it down there. I thought, well crap, this just got worse. So, in the master bed, this random girl and I are playing with each other as my friend is sleeping next to us. Trust me, I wanted no part of this. She begins to quietly move at this point. I'm just very disappointed in myself for doing. And there was really no going back at this point. All of a sudden, my friend gets up out of bed, walks around to the other side, where I was, stops, turns, looks at both of us and yells, "Just do it already." He then exits the room. I turn and look at the girl. She looks at me, and we continued. Not my proudest moment, but I talked to him after, and he was chill about it. Do you just wanted to get some sleep? Story 7. Okay, I have multiple stories about forbid. Indeed, so I will give bullet points. So I did my friend's mom for 3 months, played with my friend's girlfriend. While he drove me home, did my mom's friend in the other hole in the hood in my car, next to a railroad track, had a group thing with 2 Asian ladies at a massage parlor by accident. Did it with 2 women with terminal cancer. Did the cashier at a gas station in the back on her lunch break. Everyone needs to keep their wives' girlfriends, Asian massage, therapists, criminal, cancer patients, and cashiers away from this guy. Oh, and everyone needs to leave a like in this video and subscribe to the channel too. Story 8, edit a lot with the same axe. Did it had a baby changing station in the women's room at Sheets while my sister and her boyfriend waited out in the car. Girls kept walking in while we were buying it out future to son. One asked if it was all right to come in, and I was like, yup. Her parents took her daughter to Walmart one afternoon. While we were at their house, we decided it was a good opportunity to get it on their couch while they were gone. I finished and look out the window, and her parents and her daughter were getting out of the car and walking in. We go into panic mode. I zip up and lay down, and she runs off to the bathroom. I think we would have gone away with it had she not left her undies in the hallway. Fortunately, her daughter was none the wiser. The first night I met her was at a bar, and after I made some moves on her, she invited me back to her place. I did her on the couch for a while, but alas, whiskey junk got the evening short, and she passed out a little later after she fell asleep. I heard movement upstairs, followed by a dude dressed in a camo and Dallas Cowboys hat, wielding a huge shotgun. She failed to mention she lived with her dad. Late one night after blowing some perks, I had to run to my office to grab something. My office had a huge bay window facing the street in the first floor. We ended up doing the deed in front of that at 3 a.m. while some black dudes banged on the window, cheering us on. Hey, it's a baby changing station, not a baby. Making one story 9, buckle up folks, bit of a long story. So my mom invited me as a +1 to a wedding in Mexico last year, so she and my grandma wouldn't have to drive alone. The bride-to-be was the daughter of one of my mom's best customers, so it was important to my mom to appear fairly civilized, but we ended up getting a little lit before the ceremony. 2 for 1 on drinks at the pool before. Anyway, I met the bride's cousin at the reception who was 7 years my elder. I was 22 when she was 29 and proceeded to hit on her and publicly feel her. A little, it was not discreet. The bride definitely said something, then I progresses, and we find her way back to her room, which was in a condo. Her parents were renting. Spicy stuff ensues that night. And again in the morning, however, in the morning during the act, it looked out at the beautiful view of the ocean, because we didn't have blinds in the room at that moment. I noticed in a reflection on the glass railing in the balcony that her parents were outside drinking their morning coffee while I was giving it to their daughter. They could have looked in at any moment. We went on for longer than I would like to admit. The whole morning my mom had no idea where it gotten off to and thought I had been kidnapped or something. Story 10. At a friend's huge high school grad party. A girl who I was friends with and also had a huge crush on was there. She also had a boyfriend who was at the party. We were all buzzed, and around 3 a.m., everyone started finding a place to pass out. She and her boyfriend ended up finding a couch to fall asleep on, and I found a place on the floor, not far from them. To pass out on after her boyfriend fell asleep, she crawled over to me and just started making out with me out of nowhere and got on top and did all the work within, at the most 10 feet from her boyfriend. It was the best night of my life. Story 11. I'll let Reddit decide. Had an 8-month affair with a married woman and met in college once while daytime screwing in my apartment. Her husband called to keep up a ruse of being out shopping. She answered the phone after a minute of talking. I continued slowly, and she barely maintained composure during the 5-minute phone call. At 18, my girlfriend at the time, Rose, saw a picture on my ex in my bedroom. Andrea, she asked who he was, and I explained that we were still friends. Rose said Andrea was pretty, so I jokingly asked if he wanted to meet her, as both girls were bisexual. She said yes, and the two hit it off and ended up going home together. The following morning, they were led into my house by my cousin, and they said they had a surprise for me. 8 a.m. group experience ensued on top of a bunk bed. A 24 buddy and I were talking to the same girl online during a UFC fight party. At his place we were buzzed and started messaging her. The conversation led to her agreeing to come over to see the both of us, insinuating the deed. He brushed it off assuming she would bail. That's until my buddy got a call from her saying she was 10 minutes away. So naturally we started pounding shots since we originally didn't seriously think it was going to happen. She arrived and we went to his room, but he was on one side of the couch, she was in the middle, and I was on the other side. We did her in awkward silence until my buddy bailed. I finished up and sent her packing the next morning. We noticed red everywhere. Turns out she was on her period and decided it was a good idea to do it with 2 guys. She never met. Story 12. My wife's family took her 2 older kids, leaving us with just a 4-month-old. We were all meeting up at this lake that is down a 30-kilometer dirt road. My wife and I pulled over and started going at it in the back seat of our van, while our 4-month-old is sleeping in the car seat. It was fantastic. We had that van rocking like crazy. I've not had a whole lot of car stuff, but I totally did not expect to be able to rock the vehicle as much as we did anyways. As if doing it beside your baby isn't bad enough, right? At the height of it all, her parents drove by. They were supposed to be ahead of us, that couldn't see in the van. But it was rocking like crazy, so they had to know your baby's sleeping and you decide to rock your entire van. Amazing parenting. Story 13. I slept with my ex's ex in a barn in the middle of the night. But it turns out we were a little bit too loud, and the farmer came out with his dogs to find us buried in a pile of hay. We shot up as fast as we could and made a dash back to where we had parked the car, leaving all her clothes and dignity behind before the guy could release the hounds. Story 14. In high school, I went on vacation with my girlfriend's family and some of their friends, 10 people in total, in a medium-sized Winnebago. Driving through some Midwestern states, most of the people were either napping, driving, or navigating. The main master bed in the back of the open layout. Bagalized big sister, me, girlfriend, and little sister in a row in the bed. Girlfriend and I start getting frisky under the sheets, and all of a sudden we both have our pants down and are going at it, right, by both of her sisters, and the whole time I'm looking at the rearview mirror at her dad's eyes, praying that we don't move too much. She was pretty loud, and always had a certain smell that emanated through the area, so it was pretty risky. I hope you enjoyed the video. What's the most fuped up thing you've ever done? Story 3 was messed up. See you in next video.